On the distant planet of Vorak, where alien jungles stretch for miles and massive mountains pierce the sky, there was a legend known to all. It was a tale told across galaxies, the Beast of Vral. The creature had terrorized this world for centuries, and no one had ever dared to defeat it. The people of Vorak believed only the strongest of warriors could stand a chance against it, and the ruling alien queen, Queen Vraxia, had long held that belief. Queen Vraxia was powerful and feared by all. Her kingdom was vast, and her daughter, Princess Ilara, was the jewel of the realm. With her unmatched beauty, wisdom, and strength, Princess Ilara had many suitors from across the galaxy. However, none were deemed worthy by the queen. To marry her daughter, one had to prove their strength beyond measure. One day, a ship landed in the royal city of Vorak, a small human vessel, barely a speck compared to the grand warships that usually arrived. The people whispered, wondering if this human was the next to try his luck. His name was John Carter, a human explorer from a faraway planet. The moment he stepped off his ship, he was met by the Queen's guards. His tall frame, rugged appearance, and worn clothes made him stand out in a crowd of aliens. He didn't look like a warrior, but his eyes held a glimmer of determination. The Queen, seated upon her towering throne, observed him with curiosity. Her sharp eyes narrowed as she studied the human before her. He was no match for the challenges of her kingdom, and she knew it. Yet there was something about him that intrigued her. John stood confidently before the Queen, despite the doubt in the air. He had heard the rumors of the Beast of Vral, but he wasn't afraid. He knew that to return home, he would need to succeed. He had a mission, and this was his only chance to complete it. The Queen's voice rang out, cold and commanding. "Human," she said, "you seek my daughter's hand in marriage. To prove your worth, you must defeat the Beast of Vral. Only then will you earn the right to even gaze upon her." John didn't hesitate. "I accept your challenge, Queen Vraxia. I will defeat the beast." The Queen's laughter echoed through the chamber. She looked at her daughter, Princess Ilara, who was standing quietly beside her. "A human. Defeat the beast. I have heard many claim such things, but none have succeeded. You will be no different." John's expression never wavered. "You may doubt me, but I won't stop until I've earned your respect." Princess Ilara, who had been silent, exchanged a glance with John. There was something in his eyes that told her he wasn't like the others who had tried and failed before. She could see the fire within him. She had heard the stories of the beast too, and like everyone else, she had believed it was an impossible task. But now she wasn't so sure. "Then go," the Queen ordered. "Prove yourself, or perish in the beast's lair. I will see how far your courage will take you." With that, John turned and walked toward the jungle, ready to face whatever lay ahead. As he left the palace, the whispers of the people filled the air. Some doubted him, others were curious, but none believed that a mere human could stand against the Beast of Vral. Yet, John knew this was just the beginning. John Carter's feet crunched on the thick alien grass as he ventured deeper into the wilds of Vorak. The air was thick and humid, heavy with the scent of strange flowers and the sounds of unseen creatures rustling in the distance. His mind was focused on one thing only, the Beast of Vral. He had heard the stories of its terrifying strength and its savage nature, but John wasn't scared. He had dealt with danger before, and this challenge, though monumental, was something he had to conquer. He was alone. The Queen's guards had tried to stop him from leaving the palace, but John had convinced them that no one could defeat the beast if they were held back. The road to the beast's lair was treacherous, filled with hidden dangers and unpredictable weather patterns. Yet John moved forward, his mind made up. He would prove the Queen wrong. As he walked, the landscape began to change. The towering trees thinned, giving way to rocky outcrops and jagged cliffs. A storm was brewing, dark clouds rolling in across the horizon. John pressed on, knowing the weather would only make the journey more difficult, but he was determined. Nothing would stop him from facing the beast. Hours turned into days as John navigated the harsh terrain. He slept little, always alert to the sounds around him. Strange creatures, some with sharp teeth, others with glowing eyes, watched him from the shadows. He had to use all his skills as an explorer to avoid trouble, relying on his knowledge of the land and quick thinking. One evening, as the sky darkened with the coming storm, John stumbled upon a strange, half-hidden cave in the side of a mountain. A faint, eerie glow came from within. He had reached the beast's lair. Taking a deep breath, John stepped inside. The air grew cold, and the ground beneath his boots became uneven and slippery. The glow intensified, casting long, twisted shadows across the walls. The cave was massive, stretching far deeper than John had expected. It felt like the mouth of a beast itself, ready to swallow him whole. Suddenly, a growl echoed through the cave. John froze. It was low and guttural, the sound of something large and powerful. He slowly unsheathed his knife, the only weapon he had brought with him. It wouldn't be enough to defeat the beast, but it would have to do. The growl grew louder, and then, from the darkness ahead, something massive stepped into the faint light. The beast of Rahl was here. John's breath caught in his throat as he stared at the creature. It was enormous, with scales that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Its eyes were fierce, glowing with a wild, predatory hunger. The beast's muscles rippled under its thick, armored hide, and its long tail lashed back and forth. For a moment, John thought about turning back. This creature was unlike anything he had ever faced. It was a living nightmare. But he quickly pushed those thoughts aside. The queen had said only the strongest could marry her daughter. John wasn't going to back down now. He had to face this challenge, no matter the cost. The beast's eyes locked onto John, and with a terrifying roar, it charged. As John stood face to face with the beast, his heart raced, but his mind remained sharp. The creature's roar echoed through the cave, sending vibrations through the walls. Its glowing eyes locked onto John, and with terrifying speed, the beast charged. John's grip tightened around his knife as he prepared for the battle of his life. But just as the beast lunged toward him, a sudden movement from the shadows caught his attention. Something, or someone, darted between John and the beast, catching the creature off guard. The beast skidded to a halt, its massive claws scraping against the stone floor. From the darkness, a figure emerged, a woman, tall and strong, her face hidden behind a cloak of dark fabric. She moved with surprising speed and grace, and in an instant, she stood between John and the beast, blocking its path. "Get back," she shouted to John, her voice commanding. "I'll handle this." John, still in shock, stumbled back. The woman had no weapon, no armor, yet she stood her ground against the beast with an air of confidence. The beast growled, sensing the threat, and reared back, its muscles tensing as it prepared for another attack. But the woman didn't flinch. Instead, she seemed to speak to the creature in a low, rhythmic tone, her voice like a soft chant. For a moment, the beast paused, as if listening. Its wild, glowing eyes flickered, and the tension in the cave seemed to ease slightly. Then, with a swift movement, the woman stepped forward and lashed out with her hand, striking the beast across the face with a force that surprised even John. The beast let out a pained howl and staggered back, momentarily dazed. John couldn't believe his eyes. Who was this woman? She was no ordinary person. That was clear. She moved with a confidence and power that seemed to rival even the beast's. "Who are you?" John finally asked, trying to steady his breath. The woman glanced back at him, her eyes glinting with a mysterious knowledge. "I am Ilara," she said quietly, "Princess of Vorak, and I've been watching you." John's eyes widened in disbelief. The princess, the very same Princess Ilara he had heard of in stories, the one whom the queen had promised to marry off to a worthy suitor. But why was she here, in the beast's lair, and why had she helped him? "I've been watching you," Ilara repeated, stepping back to face the beast again. "You may be human, but you have something the others didn't. Courage. Determination. The beast, recovering from the blow, growled again. But this time, Ilara didn't step back. Instead, she stood tall, as if preparing to face the creature herself. But you'll need more than just that if you want to survive, she warned John, her voice tinged with urgency. The beast is not just a monster. It's a force of nature. And unless you're ready to fight with more than just your knife, it will destroy you. John hesitated, his mind racing. He had come here to prove himself, to defeat the beast, and earn the Queen's respect. But now, with Ilara standing by his side, he realized he had much more to learn about the dangers of this world. And about himself. Ilara turned to him, her expression serious. "Come with me. I can help you. But you have to trust me." John nodded. He had no other choice. Together, they would face the beast. And maybe, just maybe, they would survive. The beast's eyes gleamed with fury as it recovered from the blow. It seemed angrier now, more determined to crush anything that stood in its path. Ilara stood firmly in front of John, her body poised like a warrior ready to fight. The air around them felt heavy, charged with the power of the beast's presence. John's heart pounded in his chest. He had never seen anything like this creature. It was monstrous, with long, sharp claws, scales that looked as hard as metal, and teeth that could tear through anything in their way. Despite the fear swirling in his stomach, he didn't back down. He knew that the only way to survive was to face this challenge head-on. "Ilara," John whispered, trying to keep his voice steady. "How can we defeat it?" Ilara glanced at him, her eyes filled with determination. "We need to outsmart it," she said quickly. "The beast isn't just strong. It's clever. If we can keep it off balance, we might have a chance." John nodded, his mind racing. His knife was barely a match for the beast, but he had other skills that might give them an advantage. He had learned to survive in dangerous situations, using his wits and quick thinking to outlast threats. Now he had to use all of that to help him in this fight. The beast growled again, its voice like the rumble of thunder. It took a step forward, its massive claws digging into the stone floor. Ilara raised her hand, signaling John to stay back. The beast was getting ready to charge. "Stay behind me," Ilara ordered, her voice sharp and calm. John hesitated but obeyed, stepping back and watching closely. Ilara moved with incredible speed. In a blur of motion, she darted to the left, drawing the beast's attention. It followed her every move, its glowing eyes fixed on her. Ilara was a blur of grace, dodging and weaving with ease, leading the beast deeper into the cavern. John watched as the beast struggled to keep up with her movements. She was quick, and it was clear that she knew how to fight. But even though Ilara was fast, she couldn't keep it distracted forever. The beast was relentless. John knew this was their chance. He glanced around, searching for something, anything, that could help them. His eyes landed on a large rock formation nearby, its sharp edges sticking out like a jagged knife. If he could get the beast close enough to it, maybe the terrain could be used to their advantage. Taking a deep breath, John sprinted toward the rock formation, his feet pounding the cave floor. The beast roared in fury, turning to follow him. Ilara, sensing what John was doing, made her move. She rushed forward, drawing the beast's attention once again, and in a flash, she dodged its claws, her feet barely touching the ground. John reached the formation just as the beast closed in. With one last burst of strength, he leaped to the side, narrowly avoiding the beast's snapping jaws. The creature's massive body crashed into the rocks with a bone-shaking thud. For a moment, the beast was stunned, disoriented by the sudden collision. "Now," Ilara shouted. John didn't hesitate. He grabbed a sharp piece of rock from the ground and threw it directly at the beast's vulnerable underbelly. The stone struck with surprising force, causing the beast to howl in pain. Enraged, it whipped around, searching for its attacker. It was now or never. The beast was dazed, and for the first time, It looked like they had a chance. The cave trembled with the beast's angry roars as John and Elara took a few moments to catch their breath. The beast, temporarily stunned by the rock, was regaining its senses, but it was clear that it was injured. They had managed to land a hit, and that small victory gave them a sense of hope. But they couldn't afford to relax. The fight was far from over. John wiped the sweat from his brow, his heart racing. His hands were trembling from the close call, but he felt something growing inside him, determination. They had injured the beast, and that meant it wasn't invincible. They had a chance. But how long could they keep this up? Elara, though equally tired, was already thinking ahead. She glanced at John, her face a mixture of exhaustion and focused intent. We have to move quickly. The beast will come for us again, and this time it won't hesitate. John nodded, trying to steady his breathing. He could feel the weight of the challenge ahead. They couldn't defeat the beast by brute force alone. They had to outsmart it, use the environment, and keep it distracted. But he was beginning to understand that this wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a battle for respect. "Do you think the Queen will accept us if we defeat it?" John asked, his voice uncertain. He was used to fighting for survival, but this was different. This was about more than just himself. It was about proving something to someone who thought he was incapable. Elara turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "The Queen. She doesn't believe you can do it. She doesn't think a human could ever match her standards. But it's not just about defeating the beast. It's about showing her that strength isn't just physical. It's about heart, courage, and you have both." John looked at her, surprised by her words. He hadn't expected her to be so supportive. He had always thought of the Queen as a ruler who valued power above all else, someone who would never give anyone, especially a human, her blessing. But Elara seemed to believe in him. Before he could respond, a loud roar echoed through the cave, pulling him back to reality. The beast was on the move again, and this time it was furious. John grabbed his knife, but Elara held up her hand to stop him. "Wait," she said, her voice calm. "We need to be strategic. If we attack it now, we'll only make it angrier. We need to lead it into the trap." John followed her lead, his heart pounding. He wasn't sure what kind of trap Elara had in mind, but he trusted her. She had been guiding him through this dangerous world since they met, and now she was showing him how to fight smarter, not harder. Elara motioned for him to follow her as they moved deeper into the cave, staying close to the walls. The beast was getting closer. John could hear its massive steps echoing throughout the cavern. As they moved, Elara's eyes scanned the surroundings. The walls of the cave were jagged and uneven, perfect for setting up a trap. They needed to lure the beast into an area where it could be cornered, but it wouldn't be easy. The beast was cunning, and it had already shown that it could track them easily. Meanwhile, in the distance, back at the Queen's palace, rumors about John's progress were beginning to spread. The Queen, still confident in her belief that no human could defeat the beast, dismissed the idea that John could succeed. But as word spread, even some of her most trusted advisors began to whisper, could it be possible that this human, this outsider, could actually succeed where so many others had failed? But the Queen's pride would not let her acknowledge any doubt. She refused to entertain the thought that a mere human could prove her wrong. Still, something in her heart began to stir. Would John Carter be the one to change her mind? The air in the cave grew heavy, thick with tension. Every step John took felt like a weight pressing on his chest. The sound of the beast's growls echoed through the cavern, growing louder with every passing second. They were close now, too close. John and Elara had managed to maneuver through the winding tunnels of the cave, each turn bringing them closer to the heart of the beast's lair. The rocky walls were jagged, and the ground was uneven. But they continued, step by step, with Elara leading the way. John's mind raced. He knew the beast was only moments away from finding them. He needed to stay calm. Elara, sensing the growing danger, glanced back at John. "Stay close," she whispered. "We don't want it to know exactly where we are." John nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never faced anything like this before. The Queen's challenge felt like a distant memory now. This was no longer about proving himself to anyone. It was about survival, and about facing the beast, this unimaginable monster that had terrified an entire planet. Suddenly, a rumble shook the cave. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and John's eyes widened as the beast appeared before them. It was even more terrifying than he had imagined. The creature was massive, its body a mix of powerful muscles and jagged scales that shimmered like dark metal. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, a burning yellow that seemed to see straight through him. The beast's breath was heavy, and the growl that came from its throat was deep, shaking the walls of the cave. For a moment, everything was still. The beast stood in front of them, its enormous form blocking the way. It was as if time had stopped, and John could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The creature's eyes locked onto him, and he could sense the pure malice in its gaze. It was not just a wild animal. It was a hunter, and he was its prey. "Elara," John murmured, his voice low and filled with uncertainty. He had been preparing for this, but now that the beast was here, all his training, all his plans seemed small compared to the reality before him. Elara's expression was unreadable, her body poised, ready for action. She didn't look afraid. She looked focused. "You can do this," she said quietly. "But you have to trust me. Don't fight it head on. We need to outsmart it." John clenched his fists. He had no choice now. He couldn't run. He couldn't turn back. The only way forward was through the beast. The beast let out a terrifying roar, shaking the cave with its power. The sound was deafening, but John didn't flinch. Elara had shown him that to fight the beast, he needed to think, to act quickly and strategically. The beast's raw strength was its biggest advantage, but it was also its weakness. If they could outmaneuver it, they might just stand a chance. "Elara, get ready," John said, his voice more determined now. He was ready to follow her lead, to use everything he had learned in this battle, no matter how impossible it seemed. As if sensing their readiness, the beast lunged forward, its claws slashing the air. John barely managed to duck, feeling the wind from the beast's strike whip past him. He stumbled back, heart racing, and heard Elara's voice ringing in his ear. "Move. We need to get it into position." John sprang to his feet, and without thinking, he sprinted toward the edge of the cave. The beast followed, its massive form charging after him. John knew exactly where he was leading it, into a narrow part of the cave where the rocks were sharp and jagged, a place where it would be harder for the beast to move. The beast's growl filled the air again as it followed John, its eyes never leaving him. But John knew one thing. They were about to make their stand. The beast was relentless. Its massive form loomed ahead, charging with terrifying speed toward John and Elara. The ground shook with every step it took, and the sound of its roar reverberated in the cave, echoing off the jagged walls. John's heart raced as he took another step back, but Elara, still calm, moved forward with purpose. "Get ready, John," she called, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "This is our chance. Lead it into the narrow part of the cave." John nodded, his pulse pounding in his ears. He had followed her lead this far, but now it was time to act on his own instincts. The beast was fast and strong, but it was also in rage. It wasn't thinking clearly. If they could get it into the right position, they could trap it. John quickly glanced around the cave. The walls were sharp, filled with uneven rocks that jutted out like knives. If they could just maneuver the beast toward that section, they might have a chance. The beast's size would be its downfall in such a tight space. With one final deep breath, John darted to the left, heading toward the narrow part of the cave where the jagged rocks formed a sort of natural barrier. He could hear the beast charging behind him, its growl growing louder by the second. He had only a few moments before the creature caught up. "Ilara, now!" he shouted, signaling her to make her move. Ilara reacted instantly. She leaped into action, drawing the beast's attention just as it was about to pounce on John. She moved with the speed and grace of a trained warrior, dodging the beast's massive claws with ease. The beast roared in frustration as it tried to follow her. But Ilara had a plan. She led the beast straight toward the narrow section of the cave. As it closed the distance, John sprinted forward and stopped just at the entrance to the narrow path. The beast was right behind him, its claws swiping the air. With a quick motion, John ducked to the side, letting the beast charge right past him. The beast, unable to stop in time, crashed into the sharp rocks that lined the narrow part of the cave. It howled in pain as its massive body collided with the jagged stone, sending vibrations through the ground. For a moment, it seemed stunned, disoriented. John wasted no time. He picked up a large piece of rock and hurled it at the beast's head, hitting it with surprising force. The creature let out another painful roar, its eyes flashing with fury. It was trapped now, unable to move freely in the narrow space, but it was still dangerous. "Ilara, now's our chance," John shouted. Ilara nodded and moved swiftly, rushing to John's side. Together, they began to work in sync, pushing and pulling at the beast, using the rocks around them to their advantage. They weren't just fighting the creature, they were outsmarting it. But then, something unexpected happened. As they fought, John noticed a flicker of hesitation in the beast's eyes. It wasn't the wild, mindless rage he had seen before. There was something more in those eyes. Fear. The beast was trapped, and it knew it. It was no longer a hunter. It was the hunted. In that moment, John understood something important. The beast wasn't just a force of nature. It was a creature with emotions, with instincts. And those instincts had been driven by years of survival in a world of endless danger. But now, it was time for the creature to face its own weakness. With one final push, John and Ilara worked together to force the beast further into the narrow space. The creature struggled, but it was clear it couldn't escape. The fight was over. John looked at Ilara, breathing heavily, and for the first time, he saw something in her eyes that he hadn't expected: pride. Not in his strength, but in his heart. He had faced the beast not by overpowering it, but by understanding it. "You did it, John," she said, her voice soft but full of admiration. John nodded, still catching his breath. "We did it." The air in the cave was still, the beast's roars now replaced by the heavy silence of its defeat. John stood at the edge of the narrow path, his heart still racing from the battle. The cave was dark, save for the faint glow of the beast's fading eyes. He turned to Ilara, who was catching her breath beside him. "We did it," John said, his voice full of disbelief. They had faced the impossible, and together, they had defeated the beast. Ilara nodded, her face tired but determined. "Yes, we did. But our challenge isn't over yet." John looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" Ilara's expression softened. "The Queen, she won't easily accept this. Even with the beast defeated, she still believes only the strongest deserve her daughter. And I fear she will never accept you, no matter what you've proven today." John swallowed hard. He had always known that winning the Queen's favor wouldn't be easy, but he had hoped that defeating the beast would be enough. He had given everything, faced the dangers, fought the monster, and even put his life at risk for Ilara. He wanted to prove he was worthy. "We'll see about that," John said, his voice firm. "I didn't come this far just to fail now. We have to show her that strength isn't just about physical power. It's about heart, and I have that." Ilara looked at him with admiration, but also with concern. "I hope you're right. The Queen's pride is legendary. She may never believe that a human is worthy of me." The two of them left the cave, stepping into the bright light of the alien world outside. The journey back to the palace felt longer than it had when they first set out. John couldn't stop thinking about what awaited them. The queen had made it clear that no man would be good enough for her daughter. Would she see the truth in John's heart, or would she dismiss him like all the others? As they neared the palace, they could see the guards standing at attention, their eyes following them closely. Word had clearly spread about the defeat of the beast, and John knew the queen would be waiting. He could feel the weight of her gaze before he even entered the throne room. When they finally entered, the queen was seated upon her throne, her eyes sharp and unblinking as she regarded them. Her gaze lingered on John for a moment before shifting to Ilara. "Well," the queen asked, her voice cold. "Did you succeed?" Ilara stepped forward, her chin held high. "Yes, Your Majesty. John has defeated the beast. He is strong, brave, and worthy of your daughter's hand in marriage." The queen's eyes narrowed. "A human? You expect me to believe that this outsider can truly be worthy?" John stepped forward, his voice calm but full of conviction. "I don't expect you to believe anything. I only ask you to see what I've shown. Strength is more than just power. It's the will to keep going when everything seems impossible. It's the heart to fight for what's right, no matter the cost." The queen studied him closely, her gaze unreadable. For a long moment, silence filled the room. John could feel the weight of her stare, the pressure of the moment. Would she see what he had done? Would she understand that this wasn't about defeating the beast? It was about proving that love, courage, and heart mattered more than tradition. Finally, the queen spoke, her voice low. "You may have defeated the beast, human, but that alone does not make you worthy. However, you have shown a strength I did not expect. Perhaps there is more to you than I first thought." John's heart skipped a beat. He had done it. He had earned her respect, not through force, but through his heart. The queen stood from her throne, her eyes softening for the first time. "You have proven yourself, John Carter. And for that, I will grant you my blessing." John turned to Ilara, and she smiled at him, her eyes filled with warmth and pride. They had done it. Together, they had proven that love could break even the hardest of barriers. The queen's words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. John stood still, his heart beating in his chest. He had expected the queen to be harsh, to turn him away, but her words were different. She had granted him her blessing, and with it, a chance to be with Ilara. As the queen spoke, John looked at Ilara. Her eyes were filled with something he had not expected to see. Hope. It was a glimmer of belief, a spark of something deeper that had not been there before. She had stood by him, trusted him. And now, it seemed, they both had the chance to build something together. Ilara stepped forward, her voice calm and steady. "Thank you, Your Majesty," she said, bowing her head. Her gratitude was clear, but there was something more in her voice, a relief, a recognition that the journey they had taken together had not been in vain. The queen regarded her daughter with a soft expression. "Ilara," she said, her voice quieter now, "you've always been strong, but I see now that you were right. Strength is not only in the power we wield, but in the hearts we choose to follow." John could hardly believe the words. The queen, who had once believed in nothing but strength and power, was admitting that love, courage, and kindness had their place too. It was a shift in her thinking, something that John had never expected. But he could feel it in the air. Something had changed. "You have shown me that a heart can be as powerful as any weapon," the queen continued, her gaze now focused on John. "I may have doubted you before, but now I see that your heart is stronger than any force I have ever known." John looked at Ilara, his eyes full of wonder. They had come so far, from a challenge that seemed impossible to a moment of acceptance. But he knew that this wasn't just a victory for him. It was a victory for love, for the idea that a bond could be built on respect, courage, and understanding. "Ilara," the queen said, her voice soft now, "you have always known what is important. Perhaps I have been blinded by my own pride. It is not the strength of the body that should rule the world, but the strength of the heart." John could feel the weight of her words. It was as if the queen herself had been on a journey. And now, in this moment, she had come to understand what it meant to truly see the world through another's eyes. Her perspective had shifted, and it was a powerful thing to witness. Ilara turned to John, a smile spreading across her face. It was a smile of relief, of love, and of gratitude. John felt the same. The road ahead was uncertain, but they had both proved something that no one could take away. They had faced the beast, the queen's doubts, and their own fears. And together they had succeeded. The queen looked at them both, her eyes full of a deep, silent understanding. "Go," she said, "build your future together. You have my blessing and my trust." John took Ilara's hand, and for the first time, the weight of their journey seemed to lift. The path ahead was theirs to walk together. With the queen's blessing and a new understanding between them all, they stepped forward into a future full of possibilities. The grand hall of the palace was filled with the sounds of celebration. The air was rich with the scent of flowers, and the sounds of music drifted through the open windows. Today was a day that would go down in history. John Carter, a human from a faraway planet, was about to marry Princess Ilara, the daughter of Queen Vraxia, ruler of Vorak. John stood by Ilara's side, his heart beating faster than ever. The path they had traveled together had not been easy. They had faced danger, fear, and the doubts of an entire kingdom. But now, standing in this hall with Ilara's hand in his, John felt a sense of peace he had never known before. The queen, though still a powerful ruler, now stood with a softer expression. She had witnessed their journey, their struggles, their courage, and their love. And in doing so, she had learned a new truth. Strength was not only found in power, but in the bonds we form, the hearts we trust, and the people we choose to stand by. As the ceremony began, the room fell silent. The royal priest stood before them, his voice steady and clear. He spoke the ancient words of marriage, words that had bound countless couples together for centuries. But today, the meaning of those words felt different. Today, they carried with them the weight of a kingdom's changing beliefs. John looked into Ilara's eyes, and in that moment, he saw everything he had ever wanted. Her trust, her love, and the promise of a future that they would share, no matter where it took them. They had proven to each other that nothing was impossible when they worked together. Ilara squeezed his hand, a small but powerful gesture. It was all the confirmation he needed. This was real. They had done it. Against all odds, they had earned each other's respect, and now they were about to become one. The queen stepped forward, her regal presence filling the space. Her eyes were on her daughter, but there was no longer a trace of doubt in her gaze. There was only pride, and something else, something softer, something that spoke of acceptance and love. "John Carter," the queen said, her voice carrying across the room, "you have shown us all what it means to be strong, not through your fists, but through your heart. And because of that, I give my blessing to this union. You may not be from our world, but you have proven yourself worthy of our daughter." John bowed his head in respect. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I will honor her with everything I have." The queen's eyes softened. "I know you will." The priest continued, his voice a steady rhythm, leading them toward the final words of the ceremony. The crowd watched, their eyes filled with wonder. They had all heard the stories of John's victory over the beast, but this moment was the true victory, one of love, understanding, and acceptance. As the priest spoke the final words, John and Ilara stood together. The crowd erupted in cheers, and for the first time, John truly felt like he belonged. He was not just a human in a foreign land. He was a partner, a husband, and someone who had earned a place in their world. As the ceremony ended, John and Ilara walked hand in hand out of the hall. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow across the world of Vorak. They had faced the impossible, and together, they had triumphed. Their future, full of promise and hope, stretched before them. And as they walked toward the future, the queen, watching from her throne, knew that her daughter had made the right choice. Strength, love, and heart. They were the true power in the world. And now, they would build a future together.